Hello, welcome back to the Simple-ESL Podcast, where we help you to build your English naturally through real conversation and practical grammar. So, my name is Will, and in today's lesson or episode, we're going to talk all about modals for advice and ability, and we'll be exploring them through a realistic scenario or situation, a job interview. So, whether you're preparing for your first interview or just want to sound more confident when you talk about skills and advice, this is the episode for you. Now, let's start with our story. I would like you to listen, and we're going to try to pull out some important phrases and ideas from this passage. Maria had a big job interview coming up. She felt nervous and worried she might not do well. Her friend James noticed and said, "You should dress smartly, and you could practice answering some common questions." She smiled and replied, "That's a good idea." The next morning, she prepared carefully. She practiced her answers, reviewed her CV, and took a deep breath before leaving. During the interview, she spoke clearly and confidently. When she came home, she called James and said, "It went really well." James laughed and said, "I knew you could do it." Maria felt proud and realized that a little preparation can make a big difference. This short story uses modals for advice and ability, should and could. James gives advice. You should dress smartly. This means it's a good idea or recommendation. He also says you could practice answering questions, suggesting a possible action Maria can take. Later, James says, "I knew you could do it," using could to talk about ability in the past. These examples show how modal verbs help us sound polite, supportive, and confident when talking about what is possible or advisable. So let's practice some key phrases. I would like you to listen carefully and repeat each one after me. Try to match the rhythm and tone so that your English sounds natural. Here we go. You should dress smartly. You should dress smartly. You could practice answering questions. You could practice answering questions. You can show them your strengths. You can show them your strengths. I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it. A little preparation can make a big difference. A little preparation can make a big difference. Excellent work. These phrases are really useful for everyday English and professional situations, especially when giving advice, showing encouragement, or talking about ability. Remember, should is for advice. When something is a good idea, you should do it. Could is for possibility or ability, something you could do. Can shows what someone is capable of doing right now. You can finish this lesson. Keep practicing these out loud until they feel natural. Repetition builds confidence, and confidence will help you communicate clearly in any interview or discussion. Now let's look at some of the key words from today's story and how we can use them when talking about interviews and confidence. First, we have interview. So an interview is a meeting where you talk about a job. For example, she has a job interview tomorrow. This is when an employer meets a candidate to ask questions and decide if they are right for a role. Next, we have CV. CV. So CV is a written summary of your education, work experience, and skills. So, for example, he updated his CV before applying. In some countries, we would use the word resume, but in British English, CV or curriculum vitae is more common. We shorten it to CV. Third, we have confident. Confident. Confident means you are sure of yourself. You feel you can do something really well. So, for example, she felt confident after practicing her answers. Confidence is one of the most important qualities during an interview. And to be confident, we should prepare. So the word prepared. Prepared. This means you are ready because you have planned or practiced. So, for example, he arrived prepared for with his CV and questions. Preparation helps us reduce nerves and show professionalism. Then we have advice. Advice. This can be helpful ideas or suggestions on what you should try to do. So, for example, my tutor gave good advice for the interview. Notice that we don't say advices. It's an uncountable noun, so it would be advice. Finally, we're going to use the word strength. Strength. A strength is something you're good at, a strong skill or quality. So, for example, you could say, communication is one of my strengths. Interviewers often ask, what are your strengths? So it's a good idea to practice your answer to that question. These words, interview, CV, confident, prepared, advice, and strength, are all connected to success in professional and academic situations. Try using them in your own sentences and when talking about your experience. The more you practice, the more confident you will sound. And let's look more closely at the grammar we've been using. Modals for advice and ability. These small words, should, could, and can, help us express different attitudes in a polite and confident way. First, we look at should. We use should to give advice when we want to recommend something or say what's a good idea. So, for example, you should prepare for your interview. That means it's important or wise to get ready. Another example, you shouldn't be late. Here we're using the negative should not, contracting it to shouldn't. Here it means it's not a good idea. It's better to arrive on time or early. So remember, should is for advice, shouldn't is for what you should not do. You should not do that thing, the opposite of advice. It helps people make better choices. We have could. We use could to suggest something or to show possibility. So, for example, you could practice answering questions. This means it's an option, not a rule, but something that's helpful. Another example, it could go really well. It expresses a positive possibility. We're imagining a good outcome. So could is a great way if you want to be polite or encouraging without sounding too strong or bossy. So you could do this. And we have can. We use can to show ability or permission. What someone is able to do right now. So for example, you can do this. This shows confidence and encouragement. She can speak confidently. This means she has the ability, she knows how to do it. So to summarize, use should for advice, use could for polite suggestions or possibilities, use can for ability or permission. These three modals are powerful tools for expressing support, confidence, and possibilities, which are all essentials in interviews and academic discussions. So use this in your classrooms. And it's time for a little bit of quiz review. What is the most common job interview question? Tell me about yourself. What's your name? Do you like coffee? So what do you think is the most common interview question or statement? Let's see if you've got this correct. The most common question you'll have in an interview is, tell me about yourself. So they want to know who you are, what you can do, what you could do, all these things are useful. So using those modals to talk about, I can do this, I could do this, I should do this. What color is the best to wear for an interview? So what's the most common color? We have bright red, black, or green. So what's the best color to wear for an interview, or the most common color that people wear in interviews? So if you're thinking of suits, you'd have black. So the color that is most common would be a black suit. Now let's practice some speaking. Here we have your question. Have you ever had a job interview? Think about your experience, how you felt, and what you did to prepare, and what advice you would give someone. So let's listen to an example answer. So, have you ever had a job interview? Yes, I have had a few job interviews before. One of them, I was really nervous, but I told myself I could do it. I prepared carefully and practiced my answers, reviewed my CV, and made sure I dressed smartly. Before the interview, my friend gave me some advice. She said, you should stay calm and speak clearly. During the interview, I was confident and tried to show my strengths. In the end, it went really well, and I got the job. This answer uses some of the grammar, or the same grammar, and vocabulary from our lesson. And did you notice the modal verbs? We use should to give advice, could to show ability and possibility, and can to express confidence. So now it's your turn. Try answering this question aloud. Pause the podcast for a second and use words, the vocabulary that we learned earlier. Interview, CV, confident, prepared, advice, and strength. And remember to use the modals. So you can say, I should prepare more next time, or I can improve my answers. These small details will improve your English. So let's move on to our next question. How did you prepare for it? This is a great question and a great way of practicing using past tense and grammar from today's lesson, especially modals for advice and ability, like should, could, or can. Here is our example answer. I prepared by practicing my answer to common interview questions. I read some advice online. I read some advice online that said you should research the company before the interview. So I did that too. I also asked a friend to help me. She said I could practice speaking more confidently, and that really helped. The night before, I checked my CV, chose my clothes, and made sure I was prepared. On the day, I reminded myself, you can do this, and that gave me confidence. In this example, you can hear all of the key grammar and vocabulary from our lesson. Modals, should, could, and can. Vocabulary, advice, confidence, CV, and prepared. So once again, this is your turn. You may want to pause the podcast for a second, but I want you to think about a real interview you've had, or imagine one in the future. Try answering this question aloud using at least one of today's modals. For example, I should have prepared more, or I could practice with a friend next time. Let's finish with a discussion question. So, why is confidence important when speaking in English? This question connects perfectly to today's theme. Confidence, preparation, and using modals like can to express ability. Think about what happens when you feel confident compared to when you don't. When you're confident, you speak more clearly, you can share ideas without worrying about mistakes, and you can focus on communication, not perfection. So here's an example answer. Confidence is important when speaking English because it helps you express yourself more naturally. Even if you make small mistakes, people can still understand you. When you believe in yourself, you can focus on what you want to say instead of how to say it. I think students should practice speaking often because the more you practice, the more confident you become. Once again, you'll notice we've used today's grammar. Can to show ability. You can express yourself more naturally. Should to give advice. Students should practice speaking often. So now, once again, it's your turn. What do you think? Why does confidence matter when learning English? Take a moment and speak your answer out loud. And try to include a few of the modal verbs like can, could, or should to show ability. Remember, confidence doesn't mean being perfect. It means believing you can improve every time you speak. And this draws us to the end of today's podcast. So great work, everyone. Let's quickly review what we have learned today. Today, you have listened to a story about confidence and preparation for a job interview. We learned vocabulary for job interviews and giving advice, words like confident, prepared, advice, and strengths. We practiced grammar with modal verbs like should, could, and can. And finally, you answered speaking and discussion questions to help you use English more naturally and confidently. And we have a bonus homework challenge for you. Here is what I'd like you to do. Write or record a short speech giving advice for a job interview. Try to use at least use the modal verbs at least 4 times. Okay, so I want you to try using should, could, or can. Try and use them 4 times in your passage. So, for example, you could say before an interview, you should prepare. You could practice with a friend. You shouldn't forget to smile. This short task will help you review everything we've covered with advice, ability, and confidence. And don't forget, if you want to find extra worksheets, lesson notes, or discounts on tutoring, you can by visiting all my links /simple-ESL21, scan the QR code on screen, check the description. This is a great way to access all of our materials on our Patreon page. Thank you for joining us for the Simple-ESL podcast. Remember, keep practicing, stay confident, and remember, you can do this.